taxes for 320 million people have just been announced. But why? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. Because when it comes to passing bills, Congress has had a very difficult time getting much passed. But taxes are one of the things that every single lawmaker will fight for. Fight for more taxes or fight for less taxes. Now, when it came to the bills that have recently been passed, for example, the debt ceiling bill, this meant that the debt ceiling crisis was temporarily averted. But there's other major issues that are still being resolved. And today we're going to talk about that. But first, all I ask is if you enjoy videos that are keeping you up to date and just informed on what's going on within Congress and in the U.S. economy, do me a favor, go ahead and hit that like button. But let's get right down to the video and let's break down this breaking news on taxes for more than 320 million people here in the United States. First, it's no surprise that Democrats have been talking about taxes. They've been trying to raise taxes for multiple years, trying to get the American people to pay a little bit more, or specifically the wealthy. They pay more so that we can dole out more benefits. That's what they're discussing. Now, Republicans, though, are also talking about taxes now. This is where things are completely different. Before, Republicans didn't want to talk about taxes. They said, no new taxes. We're not going to do the tax and spend strategy. That's not working. That got us to over a $31 trillion deficit. No, we have to change it. Well, here's what we know. Recently, the House Ways and Means Committee, they introduced legislation called the American Families and Jobs Act. Now, this was a Republican proposed bill, and the goal was to provide tax relief. And the way that was going to be done is by raising the standard deduction for almost all Americans. Now, here's where things started to get a little bit tricky, and this is where Democrats said, no, we don't really support it. The only reason why Democrats didn't get more support for this bill is because of the way it was structured. This piece of legislation consisted of 3 separate bills. Democrats supported only one of those bills. And in that bill, it provided a boost to the standard deduction. Now, keep this in mind. Republicans proposed a bill, or a piece of legislation that consisted of 3 separate bills. Democrats only supported one of those. The other 2, they didn't support. Okay? That is important to note because of what a Senate aide said about passing bills. Listen to this. So, in part of the discussions when it comes to passing bills, this is the hardest part, is to get enough support, especially in the Senate where they need 60 votes. So, here's what I can tell you. Right now, taxes are going to be on the table. According to multiple experts, according to multiple senators, according to many representatives in the House, they are saying that taxes will be on the table for the fiscal year 2024 appropriations bill come September. The reason why is because right now there is a spending cap. Okay? That cap is what is keeping Democrats pretty much from just blowing the roof off things and spending as much money as they want to. But if they can bring in additional revenue and offset that, then maybe Republicans would vote for it. But who do we tax? That creates part of the problem. So, this means we are potentially going to see an increase in benefits to the American people, or we could also see cuts to the American people, but an increase in tax revenue to hopefully pay off more of the deficit. Again, taxes are going to be a big thing, but keep in mind, there was a bill that was proposed, okay? 3 different bills. Democrats only liked one of those. Republicans proposed all 3. This is why it's so important. Lawmakers have proposed different versions of the child tax credit payments in recent years. Now, all reports indicate that this is back on the table. This is something that both parties want. There's bipartisan support here. Now, recent estimates show that nearly 4 million children fell back into poverty once the expanded child tax credit payments ended. This was devastating when it happened because what we saw were, clothing for children spiked, right? There's more people could afford it, right? Food, yes, there's food prices continue to go up, but at least what we found, according to multiple school districts, was that children would not come to school as hungry. Okay, their test scores were increased. Okay, they weren't coming in, food insecure. They were eating at home. They were able to buy food. They were able to buy school supplies. Lately, schools have to go and supply the tools that these children need because they can't afford them anymore. So instead of putting the responsibility on the parent, we're now putting that responsibility on the schools, which schools in some cases lack funding anyway. So we'll see what happens there. But this is why we have bipartisan support here, because what we are hearing is that this was huge, not just for the children, but for schools and for parents and just for the stress and anxiety for the American people. That this is why there's bipartisan support for the child tax credit payments. But again, this is why taxes are on the table. Are we going to see a tax cut or a tax credit? Well, even Senator J.D. Vance, he said this is one of the few issues of tax policy where you have some bipartisan agreement. In my opinion, we have more than some bipartisan agreement. With all the research that I've done, we have a lot of bipartisan support for the child tax credit payments. Now, why can't lawmakers pass something if it has bipartisan support? This is where things, in my opinion, get very interesting. Because according to a Senate aide, and they didn't want to be announced, they didn't want to be identified, but they say, and I quote, "We can't simply pass every bill that has bipartisan support. There comes a time where we need pieces to build around in order to pass other more controversial policies. And at that time, these pieces will be brought in." Remember how I just said Republicans proposed a piece of legislation that had 3 different bills in it. Democrats only supported the one that had a boost to the standard deduction. Okay? What this Senate aide just said, just announced, okay, just revealed, says we simply can't pass every bill that has bipartisan support. Okay, well, why? Well, says there comes a time where we need pieces to build around in order to pass other, more controversial policies. And at that time, then these pieces will be brought in. If you keep this in mind, okay, this is something that we've seen over the past as well. This is something that lawmakers are looking into. But they are waiting for the right time to attach other policies to a piece of legislation that has bipartisan support. Because guess what? It makes it easier for other lawmakers that are still questioning whether or not to pass that. They will vote in favor of it simply because the child tax credit payments that does have bipartisan support, well, guess what? They really want that to pass. But do they want anything for permitting reform? Maybe not, but they'll still vote for it because guess what? It has that bipartisan support around the child tax credit payments. And no lawmaker wants to be the one on record saying that no, children are not important, children do not need some additional relief. That's part of the problem. Again, this is why taxes are on the table. But it doesn't stop here either. This has come from the more of the federal level, right? From the Senate and the House. But in certain states, and I believe there's about 25 states that are considering this, is they have had a recent surplus of cash. So guess what they're doing? They're considering slashing taxes for their residents. All because right now they're sitting on their rainy day funds are just growing. And they say the American people, their residents, their citizens, they're the ones that need the money at this time. Now, why do I bring all this up? I bring all this up simply because taxes have and always will be one of the biggest discussions that we have in our nation. Taxes is how we pay a lot of what we have to offer, our infrastructure. Right now, we have more than $31 trillion in debt, and right now using taxpayer dollars to get back on track is part of the discussions. Others say no, let's continue to tax and spend. Others say no, let's just tax the American people, pay down our deficit. And then some say, let's just continue on with the way we've been going. But one thing's for sure is we can't just continue on, because we'll just continue to spend and spend and spend, and there'll be no way to recoup that money. So, what I can tell you at this time is taxes are going to be on the table when it comes to the next bill. Many lawmakers have already said this, but are we going to see tax cuts? Are we going to see additional tax credits? What is going to happen? How are we going to be impacted because of taxes? Well, what I know is this is what all the discussions are going to be about. And as we get more information, I promise I'll come back. I will fill you in on all the latest news and updates. All you got to do is two things. First off, hit that like button on this video. Click that subscribe button. Again, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys on the next one.